Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our workshop today. We're going to be talking about leadership beyond Kent State. And my name is Jessica Roshak, she, her pronouns, and I have the privilege of serving as the Assistant Director for Student Leadership Development. So today we're going to walk through your leadership experience and how this can propel you towards success in your endeavors outside of Kent State University. You've probably had a very rich leadership experience if you're sitting here with us today. And so, what are your next steps? What does that mean? The first thing that we're going to ask you to do is if you can pause the video and complete this pre-assessment. This is just going to help us to determine the effectiveness of this presentation and how we can improve it as we move forward. So please take a moment and just go ahead and scan the QR code and fill out this pre-assessment. So let's talk about why we're here today. The purpose of this presentation is that we believe all Kent State students possess leadership potential and serving as change agents within our community. But again, how do you use those leadership skills that you've learned beyond Kent State? So today we're going to challenge you all to think about your college experience, recognize what leadership looks like in a post-graduation world, and how you can continue to develop your leadership skills. We're lucky enough that we're able to provide these experiences during your time at Kent State University, but after graduation, you're likely going to have to seek continual development experiences. As you continue through your career, it may also require you to develop some skills that perhaps you didn't have once before. So, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And as we move forward, I would like you to consider, where are we lacking leadership in our society? Where can you use the skills that you have now, whether that be career related or not, to continue making change in our community or the community that you'll be moving to? It's easy to feel really lost when you leave Kent State, especially if your identity is very much built around the idea of being a student leader. But again, we're going to talk about how you get out of that rut and really start to determine where you can make a difference in your community. So something that I want you to think about is, think about a leader that you admire. What makes them a leader and why do they stand out? So since you're likely not able to pair and share on this particular activity, I'm going to ask you to pause the video here and take a moment to think through these questions. So we'll give you a minute to do so. So of course we aren't there to hear your responses, but I wanted to provide a few examples of things that may have come up or even people that you didn't think of. First and foremost, think about the loved ones who raised you. Perhaps they showed you empathy, care, what it means to love others. They also probably had a very clear set of expectations for what success looked like, what you could and could not do, and hopefully they intervened if they felt like you were headed for trouble. I know we might not always think of that as leadership, but the people that raised you are incredible examples of leaders. Even thinking about some of your extracurricular activities as a kid. Did you go to camp and have a camp counselor when you were little? You might have learned teamwork, trust, how to stay motivated, what it looks like to work with a group. They might have even had a likable personality that made you want to listen to them or made people gravitate towards them. That's a great example of leadership. Some of you may have thought of a manager from a job. They've probably taught you responsibility, servant leadership if they worked alongside of you, helped to manage conflict between colleagues and staff from time to time, and hopefully they had an exciting vision for what the company or what your role was going to become and helped you to see a long-term vision. Of course, some think of political figures because they have to navigate processes and policies that ultimately govern our cities, our state, our nation. They deliver results by using their voices and their positional power through passing or condemning legislation. And though we might not always agree with them, they are leaders within our community. And some that get very overlooked that I would be remiss to not highlight are our teachers in K through 12, or even your faculty members that you've had at Kent State. Those folks have a level of emotional intelligence that is unmatched, in my opinion, especially for the middle school years. They show care and patience with their students most of the time. They might, challenge us to push us to be the best versions of ourselves and hold us accountable when we make mistakes or don't turn in our work or don't put that best foot forward. But again, they are leaders. As I was talking, even if you didn't mention some of these folks before, I can imagine that you thought through a teacher or a loved one or a camp counselor that maybe did serve in a leadership role that now came to your mind. So I want you to think about that. We were able to identify in just a few minutes so many people. And it was easy, at least, hopefully, to be able to understand those skills, those traits that they possess that make them leaders, or why they maybe had a positive impact on us. So, my question to you is why then do we see so many of our graduates struggle and getting lost after graduation and not really understanding what this concept of leadership looks like in the real world? So, we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we move forward in today's content. But again, I want you to continue to think outside of Kent State who has been a leader through all that we discuss. So, in this next activity, what I want you to do is we're going to start thinking about imagining the future. Because in order for us to help you think through what the concept of leadership beyond Kent State looks like, we need to at least have an understanding, or you at least need to have an understanding of what the future may hold for you. So, for those of you that are graduating here soon, that is likely at the forefront of your mind. For others, this might be, a distance away, maybe a year or two. But I want you to take a couple minutes and think through the following questions, considering the next 10 years. So 10 years from now, where do you live? What kind of house, condo, apartment, or yurt do you maybe live in? Do you rent or own? Where is it located? And who do you live with? Are you employed? Do you work from home or somewhere else? What kind of job do you have? Is it 9 to 5, flexible hours, maybe even thinking about remote versus in person? How much money do you make? What benefits do you need? And for whom are you financially responsible for? Are you partnered? Who is this person? What kind of work do they do, if any? What do you do for fun, for renewal, to re-energize yourself? What is your social circle like, if any? Who do you spend time with, and what things do you have in common? And then finally, what challenges have you experienced? What's happening in maybe your town, state, the world around you? So what I need you to do now is, again, pause this video here and start to think about those questions. I want you to take, the next 2-3 minutes, and you can jot your responses down on some paper or just make a mental note of your responses to these questions. But really think through 10 years from now, how do you anticipate or hope that you will be able to answer these questions? So again, go ahead and pause the video and we'll give you some time to do this. So what we're going to do now is we are going to create your personal leadership labyrinth. You've already begun to ponder what the next 10 years are going to look like. And so now we're going to take it a step further. We're going to create a visual representation of this. So go ahead and grab yourself a blank piece of paper, some coloring supplies, a pen, whatever you need. And you can be as creative with this as you want to. And I want you to draw, what does the next 10 years look like? I would encourage you to put on some music. Again, we'll have you pause the video, but just think about what this looks like. It can be a maze, it can be a spiral, a decision tree, a life map, really whatever comes to your mind. Get creative with this. I would anticipate to do this, it'll take you about 15 minutes, so go ahead and pause the video and write some things down. I'm going to put up a slide too here while you're doing this that will give you some things to consider as you are creating your leadership labyrinths. So consider things like this. Choice points are places where you need to make decisions. And, are you going to go back to school? At what point might you seek a job or a promotion, relocating, getting partnered? There's so many things that you might need to think about where you're going to make choices in your life. Think about possible barriers you might encounter. Those can be personal, organizational, systemic, political, but where do you think you might overcome some challenges or what might threaten your success? And then finally, consider possible opportunities that you may come across. Again, those can be personal, work related, whatever comes to mind. But remember, your personal leadership labyrinth should be what are you doing over the next 10 years and try to be as specific as you can. So go ahead and pause this video now and take the next 15 minutes to do this. All right, now that you've created your personal leadership labyrinth, let's debrief this a little bit. I want you to think to yourself, how did it feel to think about the next 10 years? Did those questions provided challenge you to think differently than if we just asked you what your goals were? We were very intentional that we didn't just ask you what your 10-year goal was. We asked you about decisions that you'll have to make, challenges you might overcome, things to consider. How do you think that might have been different if we just asked you about your goals? Something that we would have done in person is asking you if there are any similarities between the labyrinths. Instead, you might want to think through if your best friend or someone that's close to you was going to do this, how do you think that their labyrinth may have been different? So go ahead, pause this video, and think through these two questions. Something else we want you to think about is, what can you tell about your leadership philosophy when you look at your labyrinth? We didn't explicitly ask you about your leadership philosophies, but I want you to connect that, whether you've formally ever written out your leadership philosophy or you just know what your leadership values are. Do you see themes like community, relationships, social change? Personally, I never realized how much community impacted me until doing this activity myself. I noticed that when I went to make decisions, thought about where I wanted to live, or even what was important for me to be around, or who it was important for me to be around, it always seemed to come back to this idea of community. And so, thinking a little bit more critically about this, I realize it's probably because I'm a very relational leader and I care about people first and to-do list seconds. I won't be happy in places and spaces that don't foster an environment that allows for connection with people. And I do think that that influences very heavily where I choose to work, the work that I choose to be in, and even where I might find joy in my work versus not. That might be a theme for you, but take a moment and consider that. I also want you to think through how does imagining future opportunities and barriers help you to better understand the concept of leadership beyond Kent State? For me, it really shines a light on your leadership philosophy, and I think it can help to serve as a guide for why you might be happy, unhappy, again, in a place or with certain people, and why you maybe thought through those different decisions or why those challenges surfaced. I think it also helps us to understand which skills you might want to refine before going into the real world. And I use that term loosely because Kent State is very much the real world. But it may also help you to identify gaps in our society and where you can make a difference. So again, go ahead and pause this video for a few moments and think through these two questions. All right, so we've talked through a lot today. What now? What steps can you take? What are the takeaways from this? So, the first thing that we would encourage you to do is to try to see leadership as a lifelong journey and not just something you do as a leader. I've also heard this phrased as leadership is a process, not a destination. And I think it fits really well here too. We often get so caught up in this identity as a student leader, and when we drop the title of student, we sometimes unintentionally drop that leader part too. You are still you, and you're still a valuable leader beyond Kent State. It doesn't change just because you're not here on campus. So try to be confident even once you're in the real world and it maybe hits you that you're not a student anymore. Similarly, knowing your personal leadership philosophy can help this a lot. We have a workshop for that if you want, like a 2.0 version to this. And if you need help creating one, I think that's a great place to start. We're happy to provide some resources. Again, think of leadership as a lifelong process because it's a journey, not a destination, and make a plan for that. If you know that you're going to have to continue to develop your leadership skills, and, I'm here to tell you, you will have to continue to develop them. How can you do that? Think about what you've done at Kent State so far. You can join a community club or organization. You can get involved in professional development experiences in your workplace. You can find a mentor and help you. You've likely done all of those things here. And certainly, if you're watching this video today, this is something that's important to you. So I would challenge you to think outside of Kent State how you can do some similar things. Again, you've joined an organization more than likely. You're creating professional development experiences for yourself by being here. And find a mentor because you likely have had some on campus and you might have an advisor that's in a formal role that is a mentor to you, but think beyond that. How can you do that in your new community? We'd also challenge you to think about your transferable skills. You're not learning this stuff here for nothing. So, one big tip that you've likely heard if you've been to any career exploration and development workshops is to keep a working resume that lists out your skills, abilities, and experiences because employers want to hear about this. A working resume is where you kind of dump all of the information that you have, all of the experiences that you have, and then when you go to submit a resume for a new opportunity or a new job, you take from that and create one that fits that position. That is something I wish I would have done earlier on, and I would strongly encourage you to do that. Knowing these skills is also important when you think about your community. Should you run for office to make change in your city or state? Are there people in your life or local community that need an advocate, and how can you fill that gap? Can you leverage your skill set or network to make a positive change where you may live now, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now? You are going to be an integral piece to your community. And as you graduate, I don't want you to lose that voice that you have likely found here. And then finally, consider the great leaders of our world and where we're lacking leadership. Be that change. One of my favorite quotes is from Gandhi. You've likely heard it before, but it says, to be the change you want to see in the world. I hope that you all take that to heart and consider how you can make an impact. You've already done so here. You're likely leaving a lasting positive legacy at Kent State. So don't let that stop now. Continue to be that change, continue to be that prominent leader in your new community. And of course, know that we're here for you even after you graduate. Of course, we likely won't see you day to day here, but we are always just an email or a phone call away, and we're happy to help to get you plugged into your new community or help you explore where you might need to do some research. So that's the content that we have for you today. I am going to ask that you please take this quick post assessment. It is completely anonymous and again serves as a tool for us to continue to improve this workshop. But I hope that it was thought-provoking. I know that this workshop likely doesn't provide a ton of answers for you. You maybe are left with more questions, which I understand can be frustrating at times. But I think that self-reflection is something that's so important and we don't do often enough. And I hope that we were able to engage you in a way today that gets you thinking about the asset that you are and those skills that you've learned and knowing that you can make an impact in your new community regardless of what the future holds for you. And then finally, we want to stay connected. So whether you are graduating or you'll be around for a while, we'd love to stay connected via Twitter and Instagram. We have our handle there. You can sign up for our biweekly newsletter by scanning this QR code. And of course, come visit us in room 220 of the Kent Student Center here in the Pepsi Leadership Center. We would love to have you all. That's all we have. We appreciate you tuning in, and you can contact us at lead@kent.edu with any questions that you may have. Have a wonderful day, everyone.